It's a special daily delivery bonus edition coming to you Saturday afternoon, early evening, I guess. Still trying to understand what I just saw, and frankly, didn't see all of it, which I'll explain to you in a little bit. Vikings beat the Colts 39-36 in overtime. Trailed 33-0 at halftime of this game. That's enough in and of itself to warrant a bonus episode, but the victory clinches the NFC North for the Vikings for the first time since 2017 and comes in their 1,000th game in franchise history, regular season or postseason. An unbelievable way for that to happen. It could only really happen in this manner, right? This team, this season. I mean, the Buffalo game a month ago was the craziest game I've seen in 15, 20 years, it seems like. And this one tops it somehow with a lot on the line. So I got a lot of thoughts on this game. You had a lot of thoughts as well. You, the listener, the reader. I'll relay some of those. I chatted quickly just via text with Ted Young, who I had on Friday's show, who talked about he was on a quest to see the Vikings beat every single team. He was in attendance because the Colts were the last one on his list. He was not feeling great at halftime. I will relay what he had to say about how he was feeling after the game. Play some post-game audio from head coach Kevin O'Connell, from Kirk Cousins, quarterback, and I will welcome on a very special guest, Aaron Rupar, Vikings fan, journalist extraordinaire, banned from Twitter, temporarily at least. Now he's back on Twitter. He's been giving a million interviews in the last 24 hours, but none of them about the Vikings. So I'll have Aaron on to talk a little bit about his journey, his great comeback as well, but mostly about the Vikings. Give him a little moment of levity to talk about that. But like I said, it could only be this way, right? This team this year now 10-0 in one-score games. Now I believe 7 fourth-quarter comebacks. You know, Kirk Cousins, who, you know, much maligned throughout much of his career for being, you know, an empty stats, empty calories, right? A guy who wasn't getting it done in the clutch, wasn't getting it done when it matters the most, throws for over 400 yards after halftime of this game. You guys, the Vikings were so bad in the first half of this game. They were so bad that I left. I left my couch. I was watching this one from home. I had our 3 kids with me. My wife was working a rare Saturday, and so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get the kids out to do something after the game is over. At halftime, I was like, you know what? We just got to get out of the house. There's nothing pulling me in here anymore. This one is over at 33-0. So I said, kids, let's go. They've been wanting to go to this fish store to look at fish. So I was like, all right. I didn't even tell them we were going to go there. I just kind of like, I said, okay, we're gonna go to this coffee shop you guys really like. You guys can play there for a while. But I didn't tell them we were gonna go to the fish store. So we go to the fish store, and you know, I had the TV off for a while. We're getting the kids ready. Hadn't really been paying attention. Get to the the fish store, and the game is on at the fish store at the aquatic center. I did not imagine this was going to be on, but I see it on, and it's the fourth quarter. Vikings are down 36-21, and I'm like, okay, this got a little bit more interesting. But then right as I got there, I think that was when Kirk Cousins threw an interception at the Colts, deep in Colts territory. And that seemed to me like that was going to end it. But I kind of kept my eye on it. The kids are, checking out fishes, doing all this stuff. And there's turtles you can feed there. It's a cool place on like 53rd in Chicago. So we're there. I'm watching the game, keeping an eye on it. And I'm like, okay. And it gets to be 36-28, and I'm like, okay, well, I told them we're going to go to this coffee shop nearby. We're going to head over there. I'm like keeping track on it. Like on the way over there, they tie it. I'm listening to Paul Allen's call of the game. They tie it. They're heading to overtime. I've got it like on my phone. I've got overtime on my phone while the kids are like running around at this coffee shop, and thinking to myself, a tie does them just as much, right? A tie would have clinched the division. A tie, playing for that wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world. How unsatisfying it would have been in the grand scheme of things. They get it down there. They get the delay of game call. They get, all sorts of things that should have gone their way early in the game. Like 2 touchdowns by Sullivan that should have been given to him that were overturned, especially including the one that would have given them a chance at tying the game. But they persevere. They get it. They get the delay of game penalty to get a little closer to get the clock stopped, and then Greg Joseph nails the 40-yarder. 11-3 for this team. An unbelievable game. Again, I still cannot believe what I saw, and I wasn't alone in maybe drifting away from this one for a little while. That was one of the funny things that I got from you guys on Twitter. Reader Zach said I went sledding for the whole third quarter. I'm not surprised. A lot of you did. Minnesota Husker, I enjoy pain, so I just kept watching. Social or Dirty says I made a snowman with the girls at the end of the first half, beginning of the second half. Watched the remainder holed up in my office, noodling in GarageBand. It was perfect. It sounds pretty good. Eric Bowe says I went grocery shopping at 16-0. Turned on the TV when I got home for OT. My faith is restored, and that's probably the biggest thing I got out of this game, right? Faith being restored, because it was easy to look at this game when it was 33-0 and say, you know what, it's been a nice year, but they just got beat by the Lions. We're only a few weeks removed from this team losing 40-3 to Dallas. Like, is this just a collapse? Is this team just waiting to collapse? Is that what's going to happen the rest of the year? Like, certainly they're probably still going to win the division, but if they're having this kind of performance after last week, after all of the defensive talk they had this week about fixing things, if they're having this after that Dallas meltdown of just a few weeks ago, what really is going on here? Is the culture really all that good? Are things falling apart for Kevin O'Connell? You saw all sorts of hot takes from a lot of people, and myself included, in the first half. Like, that was just awful, right? Like, there was nothing good to say about that, whether it was, O'Connell gambling on fourth down situations, on a fake punt, whether it was a blocked punt, the defense getting shredded, the offense getting nothing going, everything about special teams going wrong. The block punt, like I said, the long kickoff return to set up the first points of the game, like nothing was going right at all at any moment of that first half. And so you just wondered, like, is this where everything is starting to unravel for Kevin O'Connell? Is this really going to be this kind of year of destiny? And then the second half, right? Shame on me for ever leaving, although it was kind of better that way. It was kind of fun to like piece it together, to watch what happened along the way, to kind of like have to see bits and pieces, talking to the people at the fish store who were like, what's going on here? Like they had kind of given up on the game, but it was still on the TV they had on there. It was kind of fun to watch it that way, keeping track of it on my phone, watching on a small screen, but still being able to get that. It's a luxury we have these days, but you don't really imagine a team's going to come back from 33-0, the largest comeback in NFL history. Now get this, largest before that was 32 points, right? 35-3 in the playoffs when Buffalo came back on Houston so many years ago. The quarterback in that game was Frank Reich, who came on in relief of Jim Kelly. Frank Reich was the coach of the Colts until he got fired earlier this year and Jeff Saturday took over. Funny tweet, by the way. I tweeted any given Saturday, and someone, let me find who was it, that tweeted, Don from Ohio tweeted, except Jeff. Yes, Jeff Saturday, anybody but Jeff Saturday, any given Saturday in this case. But, so the guy who used to coach the Colts held that record of the largest comeback, and now Kirk Cousins holds that record, and Matt Ryan, more in glory for him. You all remember the Super Bowl, the 28-3 lead blown against Tom Brady and the Patriots when he was with the Falcons. So, it's just unbelievable what took place in this game. Just the numbers in this game are mind-boggling, eye-popping numbers when you just look at the box score. I mean, Cousins finished with 460 yards. Like I said, more than 400 of those after halftime. Dalvin Cook with 95 rushing yards, 95 receiving yards. He had a 64-yard catch, a 40-yard run. No other running back, by the way, for the Vikings gained more than 1 yard in this game. KJ Osborne, 10 catches for 157 and a touchdown. Justin Jefferson, 12 for 123 and a touchdown. The aforementioned calls that went against the Vikings. Chandon Sullivan could have had a fumble return for a touchdown, but they'd blown the forward progress dead in the first half. And in the second half, certainly should have been a touchdown. They got the ball, at least in that case, but they blew the runner, they blew the play dead, even though Sullivan grabbed it. It was a scoop and score. It was a very clear scoop and score. So to persevere through all of that, to still have people into this game, to still have the building pretty loud. I don't think a ton of people gave up on this game. And in fact, let's hear Kirk Cousins now talk about that element of the game.
I think that the fact that our defense only gave up 3 points in the second half was critical. Reminded me of the Eagles game when same thing, we were down and they just didn't give any points in the second half. And I had to remind myself of that as we were playing, knowing that if our defense can do that, they allow you to hang around and keep getting back in it. I think the fact that fans stayed to the end and provided so much energy is a big deal. There was one time where they were doing the school chant, and I was surprised that they were still in it the way they were, and so grateful that they were there with us all the way through it to the end. Great to obviously show that there was no quit, and to keep playing hard and finding a way. And then it's just so important that this is one step in a much larger goal, and it's an important step. It's a step that you talk about when you go to training camp and the season begins. But there's obviously more to go.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake. With 24/7 gaming, the good times never have to end. And you can satisfy your cravings at our restaurants and bars. Or relax in one of our luxurious hotel rooms. Those that play together, stay together. And don't forget to join Club M so you can spark new memories and bask in the rewards along the way. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
And I'm sure Cousins wishes it could have been a little bit easier, but my goodness, he is playing at a very high level right now, especially, knowing they had to throw the ball. He had to be close to flawless. I know he had that interception in the, later, but he had to be close to flawless in this game to get that done. And so that was pretty impressive. And the crazy thing about this game is a game like this is that there'll be moments along the way that you'll forget that were super important at the time, like Matt Ryan getting stopped on that really short 4th and 1, quarterback sneak that essentially would have sealed the game late in the fourth quarter. Vikings get the ball back, and that's what led them to that long touchdown and able to get it. And the Vikings had another chance to win it in regulation. They had a chance to win it at the beginning of overtime. Couldn't get it done there, but they made enough defensive plays, dialed up enough defensive pressure, and looked like a completely different team, especially defensively in the second half. Only gave up 3 points in the second half, played a lot more aggressively with nothing to lose, and it showed. I want to play a little, like I said, a text exchange I had with Ted Young, who was on the show on Friday. He had said, he was on a quest. He was on a quest to see the Vikings beat every team, and it just so happened the Colts were the last one on his list. The Vikings had not beaten the Colts in 25 years. And Ted Young lives in Milwaukee, made the trip over with a bunch of family in the last couple of days. So I texted him and said, you have any thoughts I could include on today's show? He said, it feels so surreal that I can hardly believe it. I am exhausted. This ranks up there all time with Minneapolis Miracle as number 1 or number 2 on the list. Incredible and unbelievable. And 20 minutes later, he texted, we are still here. I am resting. The most exhausting game I have ever attended. And I think a lot of you felt the same way. I asked for your thoughts, your hot takes on this game. I want to get to those too in just a minute here. Thought it was interesting too. Rick Spielman congratulating the Vikings. Say congrats, well-deserved, tweeting at the Vikings on their the largest comeback division champs. So that was interesting. The former general manager of the Vikings, who indeed put together a lot of the roster that won this game, but was not part of this year's team, obviously. So I'd asked for your hot takes. Dane Ryan said that did the defensive coordinator get replaced at halftime? Like I was talking about, that was the most disappointing part of the first half. There were a lot of disappointing parts of the first half, and again, obviously all of it wasn't on the defense because the offense and the special teams put them in terrible spots on the field. The Colts basically had an average starting field position of midfield in the first half of that game, but Ed Donatell's defense was still getting shredded for a lot of those easy gains, passes over the middle. Matt Ryan was having his way with this with the defense, was not seeming to have any trouble at all. So Ed Donatel, as far as I could tell, was still calling the plays and making the adjustments and whatnot, but it did not seem like the same team. Alex Klomstead said, "Pain, beauty, this is our Vikings." It really was, right? Like this whole season, that was like a turbocharged version of everything we've seen from this team this year. It was just, usually it's kind of back and forth. It's not usually this all at once and then everything else from the other side. But, it felt a lot like, every other game where it's like, oh man, this is not going well, not going well, not going well. Then all of a sudden it is at the end. Pat Dwyer said, "I just love Nate Burleson called Greg Joseph G Money, straight cash, homie." That's a shout out to Randy Moss of Vintage Era. Max Murphy says, "Our defense is still bad. Kirk still makes frustrating mistakes. Ed Ingram is never going to stop stepping on Kirk's feet, but clearly O'Connell has got the goods. To get the team to keep fighting even down 33 is incredibly impressive. He always seemed collected on the sidelines." That's a good point. It would have been very easy to just call this one a day, say, you know what, not our day for whatever reason. This just did not work out for us in this game. But he held it together. He got them believing. Patrick Peterson got them believing, said, hey, we just need 5 touchdowns, and that's what they got them. We'll hear a little bit from O'Connell here in a minute too, but that was impressive to me that they were able to keep this thing going, to keep in this game and not give up when it would have been very easy to do this. Greg says, let's be honest, more of a Colts collapse than a Vikings comeback, but we are entertained. I think it's both. I mean, the Colts certainly contribute. Anytime a team is going to make a comeback like that, it's going to be contributions from both the team doing it and the team that gives up the lead. But, the Vikings took it. To a large degree, they took it. They didn't even get all the breaks. Like I said, they had 2 touchdowns that probably should have been touchdowns that got overturned. Like, it wasn't just the Colts giving it back. They certainly were inept in the second half. They certainly hurt themselves with a lot of things. But, if you're going to go down to it, I think it was both in that case. Chopper McChoppy said, the telecast showed a guy wearing a Blair Walsh jersey sometime late in the game. This needs to be talked about. Certain demons were exercised at that moment. Interesting. I did not catch that. But maybe that's true. I don't know. Certainly was by the end when Greg Joseph made that clutch kick. And for all that we can say about Greg Joseph this year, missing a lot of those extra points, he has been very clutch on those field goals. And that was another case where he was clutch. Couple more here. Let me see. Brady Eyestone says the Vikings are the team of destiny. That's an interesting thing because, again, they're making this so hard on themselves that you feel like the margins, their average score is still way down. They're basically scoring as many points as their opponents this year. But at the end of the day, winning games like this does matter for something. I don't know what their ceiling is. But it does feel like this is a team that has a certain amount of that going. Alex Berger says, no matter what happens in the playoffs, this is the most exciting Vikings team of all time. And man, hard to argue with that. This Vikings team still, by the way, has not won a game by more than 17 points in over 3 calendar years. It's been December 15th, I think, 2019, since they won a game by more than 17 points. Everything has been a struggle in the last 2-3 seasons for this team, and this one was taking it to the extreme. Like I said, let's hear a little bit now from head coach Kevin O'Connell. This was his post-game remarks to the media after the game.
Just want to commend our team, our entire organization. It took everybody today after playing, our worst half of football all season long, trying to do everything really in our power to lose the football game. We came back in at halftime, and our team had a decision to make. Our coaches had a decision to make. I thought our captains, by the time our coaching staff, came out to our players and to give them the pseudo plan for the rest of the half, or for the second half, guys like Patrick Peterson, Kirk Cousins, Eric Kendricks, Adam Thielen, Brian O'Neill, C.J. Ham. Really, I'm sure I'm missing somebody, but Dalvin Cook, that's who I heard. I heard our leadership telling our guys, we've been here before, maybe not that much, maybe not the need for the largest comeback in the history of our league, but this team believes in each other, and we just had to go try to play good football. Regardless of score, we just had to try to play good football and just see if we could apply some pressure to our opponent before it was all said and done, and we were able to do that. So We set a goal to win this division at the very beginning of training camp. We have not talked about anything else besides winning the division. We knew how important that would be for our organization and our team. Now we've got to take this moment, both the things that we clearly need to correct early on in this football game, but see if we can harness the energy that it takes to set a record like that and compound that moving forward to have more complete performances, which is what this team is always on the strive to do. And I need to do a better job as the head coach demanding our standards 4 quarters to continue to give ourselves a chance to continue playing as long as they'll allow us to play this year.
All right, I'm done rambling now. I want to bring on Aaron Rupar, very special guest, journalist, excellent journalist, and was banned from Twitter for a little while here, but he is back. He is a big Vikings fan, so I want to bring him on right now. Sorry to say, but Aaron, your Twitter comeback might be only the second greatest comeback of the last few days.
Yeah, I had a few people joking in my replies that I must have inspired the Vikings with my comeback. And I'd like to think that. I'm trying to think if there are any current players that follow me. I don't think so. Some former ones do. But no, I mean, it was, I had my comeback last night and the Vikings had theirs today. And, now mine kind of pales in comparison, sadly. So, but I'm happy about that. It was an amazing game.
I don't know. I think yours is still a bigger story. When you got reinstated, like on Twitter, it was late Friday. Before we get to the Vikings, like any explanation for that, or what exactly happened along the way, or why you got brought back?
I think I basically got brought back because Elon caved. I mean, essentially, basically Twitter at this point is, it's determined by his whims day to day. I don't think there's a lot of rules in play. No. You're fortunate that you're covering sports, which is kind of a safe zone on there. Obviously, politics is kind of a different story, but it's funny because Elon ran a poll on Thursday asking when myself and other journalists that he banned over linking to this account that tracks his jet, when we should be reinstated. And the results came in that we should be reinstated immediately. And then he said, oh, whoops, I'm actually going to redo the poll. And he reduced the options, although there were still only 2. I think it was either now or in 7 days, and now won the second time. So it was kind of a Trumpian twist where he got the results from the poll, didn't like it, and then, tried to redo it. But no, I'm glad to be back. It will be kind of a little bit of I'll be careful. I don't want to get banned again. So I'm going to try and not pull too many punches, but it was kind of a learning experience for me as well. And also just amazing with how much support and just nice things people had to say. I posted a little tweet last night just thanking people for all the support, and that blew up. I think it has like well over 100,000 likes, which is just amazing to see. So between that and the Vikings game, it's been a pretty interesting and fun weekend. It's only Saturday. So.
It is only Saturday. I don't even want to know what's going to happen Sunday, but we'll see. As for the game itself, obviously you're a big Vikings fan, and what were you thinking as you watched the first half? I mean, my God, it was like the worst thing you could imagine. Like I said earlier, like I took the kids to the fish store. I was like, this game's over. What were you thinking?
Yeah, I was in a text thread with some friends, and we were trying to determine in the first half if this was the worst Vikings performance of all time. And of course, we had to narrow that down to regular season category, because I still think 41 Donut would probably take the cake there. But I was actually thinking back to the game. I think it was in the 2016 season when they lost to Indianapolis at home.
Yeah, it was. It was like 39-10. That was terrible.
Damaging fumble, and that turned into a rout, and that was major implications in that game, because I think the Vikings were basically playing for their playoff lives at that point.
Yes.
And so that was kind of my point in the text thread, was that, this is a horrendous performance, and it's just a kind of a disgrace. And I felt bad for actually my dentist. I went to the dentist on Thursday, and he was going to his first ever Vikings game at the new stadium, and he was taking his son. And I was thinking about him during this game, like that was kind of their big Christmas event, was going to this Vikings game, and just how miserable that would have been. And I'm actually curious, like I kind of want to call the office next week and see if they left early or not, because he seems like the type of guy who might have left early.
Oof.
But so yeah, I mean, it went from that, and my line on that was basically, this is a horrendous performance, but they're going to win the division. The stakes here, obviously you want to get the 2 seed, and had they lost, San Francisco would have had the tiebreaker and been ahead of the Vikings for that number 2 seed. So winning was huge in that respect. But I mean, let's face it, the Lions aren't going to run the table. The Vikings weren't going to lose out. So you knew you were going to win the division. But to go from that to winning this game, we had, basically the game went from 33-zip to, I think it was 36-21. And that happened so quickly, as we were talking about that before we started recording, that it seemed like they got back into the game in like 5 minutes.
Yeah. That's
like real life time. It was like, I kind of was eating and, kind of half paying attention. Then suddenly it was a 2-score game again. And it was kind of game on from there. So that's what sticks with me, is how quickly they got back into this.
That's probably when I was getting the kids like ready to go and then get to the store. And next thing I was like, wait, this is actually still a game? Like, what is going on here? And then so many things happen along the way, like other points where you're like, oh, well, that's going to do it. Like the Cousins interception, or, when they didn't capitalize on something, and then the Colts look like they're going to run out the clock, and then they stop Matt Ryan. Like, so many little things happen along the way. And then here's the weird thing I was thinking about, like at towards the end of regulation, like a tie would have accomplished everything that they needed to accomplish.
Right.
Anyway, it would have kept them ahead of San Francisco, and they're not going to win the tiebreaker. It would have clinched the division. But how unsatisfying would it have been for that game to have ended in a tie?
Oh, absolutely. Celebrating on the field like that. I mean, I guess they would still have some sort of claim to a historic comeback, but it would have been different for sure. And it also would have for the seeding. I mean, they'd still be ahead of San Francisco, but that could potentially hurt them down the line, not getting a win here. But the other thing, that we shouldn't lose sight of, and, I don't want to, I know that the ref angle is kind of overplayed, but the refs did take 14 points off the board.
At least seven. Like
the first call I will grant, there was
forward progress one wasn't as bad, but the other one was like the ball was out. What are they doing?
And then I still, the replays that they showed of I believe it was a punt return that went for like 50 or 60 yards where they called the face mask on the Vikings. And the TV replays were not satisfactory in terms of establishing that there was actually a face mask that happened there. But that was a huge call at the time, because they went from, on the Colts 30-yard line marching in for the tying score to like inside the 10, I think it was. And I believe that was still the drive where Cousins hooked up with Cook on the screen.
Yeah.
And that was also one of the delicious aspects, is that all year, the Viking screen game.
Terrible.
Absolutely terrible. And
absolutely
so for that
terrible
to be kind of the big play, and then for them to come through on the 2-point conversion, when you're thinking, okay, well, this has been great, but, Kirk's going to take a sack. Maybe Ingram will step on his foot again. That's happened a few times this season, including today. So, in some ways, I guess it reminds me a little bit of the Denver game from the first year that Kirk was in town, where I believe that was a 20-point comeback.
I think that was 2009. I think it was 2019, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but it was similar, where I remember thinking that first half was an absolute atrocity, and Denver was not a good team that year, like Indianapolis is this year. But, Kirk, give him his credit. He takes a lot of criticism. The stats, I mean, I believe the passing yards in the second half and overtime was like well over 400 passing yards.
It's crazy.
One of the picks he threw to Rieger, obviously Rieger did him no favors by stopping his route there. So it wasn't as though, his receivers were bailing him out. And if anything, his stats would have looked better had his receivers not, Rieger in that particular case not hurt him. But yeah, I mean, there's just so much to dissect from this game. I feel like I almost need to rewatch it, because there was a period there in the second quarter into the third where my spirits were pretty low, and I was already thinking ahead to the Giants game next weekend.
No, I mean, it totally makes sense. Like, I think a lot of people, if not altogether, like had spiritually and mentally checked out of that game, right? Like, why wouldn't you? Why would you think, aside from the way this team has, battled in a lot of these games, but they haven't been down this much. Like, and in the games where they have been down this much, they've stayed down this much. So, Aaron, a couple more things for you quick before we go. How far back does your Vikings fandom go, and where does this one rank in terms of satisfying wins now that it is a win?
Oh, yeah. Well, so I had season tickets from 2000 through 04, basically when I was in high school into college. But, I date back. I grew up in Forest Lake, so, of course, grew up as a Vikings fan, but was going to all the games in that era. I was there in the Metrodome in 2009 for the Greg Lewis game, so I think that one will always kind of hold a special place, just being there for that. That was one of the very few sporting events, I could probably count them on one hand, where strangers were hugging each other at the end of that game. So that moment won't really be topped. It's weird to kind of talk through this season, because I think, a few weeks ago, we all thought the Bills game was one of the greatest wins. I think Boise on your podcast said that was the greatest Vikings win, and he's watched pretty much all of the wins and the losses. Yeah. And I guess that was another kind of interesting tidbit is this was, the Strib also, you guys have that amazing feature this week on all of the, game 1000.
Yeah.
And had they gotten absolutely demolished in this game, that would have been kind of an unfortunate capstone on that. But, to come back and win like that,
Yeah.
So yeah, in terms of where it ranks, I think this is one of those situations where this regular season we will all remember no matter what. But I mean, let's face it, on some level, I'm very much a guy who wants to enjoy the ride. I'm not one of these guys who, is obsessing over the fact that we've never won the Super Bowl or haven't been there in, 45 years, whatever it is now. But,
right.
If they do go on to have kind of a magical run in the postseason, I think this will rank right up there with the greatest wins in franchise history. If not, it'll still be remembered as maybe the greatest win. I mean, it's the greatest comeback in NFL history. This is a 100th season of the NFL. So I don't want to downplay that. So I guess you really could make a case that this was one of their best wins. I mean, if it would have been against a better team, it might be easier to say that, but nonetheless, to come back from that deficit is amazing.
Do you believe this is a team of destiny, or are you just kind of waiting to see what happens?
I don't believe in this team to that extent. I certainly think that they will be, in all likelihood, pretty heavily favored the first weekend with that home playoff game, if it's New York or Washington, a team like that. But then, we've kind of seen it this year. I mean, Philadelphia took care of us. Dallas took care of us. So, when you get to the playoffs, we kind of saw that today. Weird things can happen. This game kind of went off the rails with the confluence of weird things with the block punt for a touchdown and, going for it on fourth down, not getting it. That was a huge swing in the game. The Vikings tried a fake punt that didn't work on another possession. So you get to the postseason, you feel like you have a puncher's chance, but the way that we looked against the cream of the NFC doesn't give me a lot of hope. But you get that home win, hopefully the first week, and if you get that 2 seed, you get another home game the second weekend as well. So I'm very much of the mindset that you get there, chip chair chance sort of thing. We'll see what happens, but I'd be lying to you if I said that I have belief that this team is going to make a run to the Super Bowl or anything like that.
Well, we'll see. It's been a strange year. It's been a strange last few days in more ways than one. I enjoy your work on Twitter and obviously your writing as well. So keep it up. Hope you stay on Twitter for the foreseeable future and enjoy the rest of the season, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Michael. I'd love to do it again. Maybe we can talk Wolves sometime.
Let's do it, baby. All right, see ya.
Yep.
All right, that's all I got. I don't know what. I'm sure there's some things I missed. Royce and I can get more of this on Monday. I'm sure we'll talk about it more on Tuesday's show as well. Listen to the Access Vikings podcast. I'm sure those guys will break this down in a different way. I just had to come on here and do this because we can't not talk about this game for 2 whole days. It is one of those special games that demands our attention, and my goodness, to do it in their 1,000th game in franchise history in the midst of a season like this and to clinch an NFC North title in the process, unbelievable. I still can't believe it happened, but it did happen, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way. That'll do it. Like I said, back again on Monday. Hope you enjoyed this bonus episode. We'll see you then.